This short video provides an introduction to report writing for students in the Library and Information Studies, Information Management and Executive Information Practice majors of the Master of IT. Let's start out at the beginning of the report. What do you include up front? First of all, you should include a title page, which will include the title of the report and your name. On the next page, you should include an executive summary. Now, executive summaries are something that students really struggle with, and I think the best way to think about what goes into an executive summary is to think about the fact that this is a summary for a busy executive. You need to provide enough information in the executive summary that someone could read it and get the gist of the report without reading the whole report. So you should provide a complete summary of your report, including a summary of your findings and any recommendations you might make at the end of the report. On the next page, you will include a table of contents, and this will list out all of the sections within your report and include a page number for them. Let's move on to the introduction section. This section is designed to introduce the research, the project, the problem, the topic. Typically, you'll include a structured introduction with subheadings like purpose, which is where you'll provide an overview of the purpose of the document, not the purpose of the project or the research. Then you'll have a scope section, and this will outline what is in and out of scope within the report, what you will and won't be covering. In the limitations section, you acknowledge any limitations on your analysis, your findings, your conclusions. Now, this isn't about limiting in terms of scope. This is about saying, well, I've conducted this project and I did these things, and these things have impacted on my findings. For example, I used convenience sampling, therefore my findings will not be representative of the community. The next section you'll have is a key terms section, and this is where you should define any of the key terms that you'll be using throughout your report. Usually, I would encourage you to develop your own definition of them, referencing relevant textbooks or relevant resources to back up your definitions. Finally, you might include a key information sources section. So if you're drawing heavily from a few information sources in your document, it's good to outline up front what those key information sources are and how you'll be using them. Also in the introduction, you'll provide information on the background to what you're talking about or the context. This might include information about the organisation, or if you're doing a research project, this might be multiple sections that provides background to the problem, followed by a rationale, research objectives, and so forth. But when we're looking at a report for management, these sections that I've outlined here on the screen, the purpose, scope, limitations, key terms, key information sources, and the background or context are the most important sections. Research is a little bit different, and when you come to doing a research project, we will provide you with lots of information on how you write a research report. The structure of the body of a report varies depending on what kind of report it is and what you're actually doing in the report. In a research report, you typically see sections like method, literature review, findings and discussion. However, that's not so relevant when you're writing up a report for management, say a briefing report or a report on a project. That will tend to be a little bit different. So let's look at an operational report and what might be included in there. You'll usually have a discussion section, which is divided into sections that are appropriate for the content, the particular topic you're looking at. Just by way of an example, a project evaluation report will provide background to the project, an overview of what happened during the project, details of the evaluation methods, and then it will move on to the evaluation itself. So of course those headings are appropriate for a project evaluation, and you will need to come up with the headings that are appropriate for any particular kind of report that you're writing in the future. In your first semester of study, we provide you really scaffolded information about your assignments, including an overview of how you should organise the content in the assignments. if you're not sure how to structure the body of your report for any assessment piece, then you should have a chat to your lecturer. They'll be able to provide you with that information. At the end of a report, there are a few things that you need to do in a certain order to follow report convention. First up, you have a conclusion section. Now, the students really struggle with conclusions. I think often that you run out of steam by the time you get to the end, and I know I personally struggle with them sometimes too. But conclusions need to be meaningful. It's a place where you pick up all the threads of your analysis, all of your arguments, and tie them together into a neat package. It allows the reader to feel like they've actually made it to the end and that they understand what you have talked about in the report. Your conclusion should be grounded in your report, so the analysis that you've done through your report, and also in the literature. So it's okay to refer to the literature. What you don't want to do in a conclusion is introduce new material. So conclusions aren't about starting new threads, they're about picking up all the threads from throughout your report and pulling them together. Following on from your conclusion section, you'll include a recommendation section. And this is where you recommend a course of action based on your report. Your recommendations should be detailed, they should be meaningful, and they should be actionable. So these are things that people can actually take action on and do. Again, they should be grounded in the literature and your findings through your report. So you don't want to make a recommendation that really has nothing to do with the discussion that you have written in the body of your report. Following recommendations, you'll have your references, and then you'll move on to your appendices, which is where you'll conclude any supplementary information that you've referred to in text but isn't relevant enough to put in the body of the report or is too long to put in the body of the report. You won't always have appendices, so it's not something you have to include. So that's the structure of the report. I wanted to also talk a little bit about some conventions. First of all, I recommend that you always number your headings in a report and use different heading styles. This allows your reader to feel oriented, to understand where they are within the report and how the content relates to each other. So use numbers and format your headings differently depending on the different level of heading. Feel free to use bullet points. You can't write your entire report in bullet points, but report writing is different from essay writing and bullet points are allowable. You should use tables where it's appropriate and also charts, but make sure you refer to your tables and charts in text and that you number and name your tables and charts. It's really important that when you're doing your assessment work and when you move into practice, that you're not just writing descriptive reports. We're not looking for you to describe something as it currently is. We want you to actually analyse what you see and provide your interpretation of it, your analysis of it. And finally, it's conventional to write reports in the third person, and you should avoid referring to yourself or a group of people who are authoring the report. So rather than saying, in this report I will, you simply say, this report will. Just a note about what is excluded and included in word counts in reports. Generally, the executive summary isn't included because it's a repeat of content that's provided in the report itself. Tables that don't have a lot of text, so tables that are primarily numerical or tick boxes, generally don't count towards your word limit, but lengthy tables or lengthy text in tables does. So that means you can't just pull a Swifty over us and put all your text in a table and have your report be as long as you like. Your reference list won't count towards your word count either, and any substantial quotations won't count towards your total word count either. So most of the time I find that students are more concerned about cutting back to avoid going over the word count than padding out to get close to the word count. So being able to exclude these things from your word count will probably help you out in terms of managing the length of your reports. I would just say though that you should check with your individual lecturer on whether they include these things in the word count, because their approach to this may vary. So this video will be followed by another that looks at writing conventions and some of the conventions that you might like to keep in mind as you write your assignments.